Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Rolka. I want to welcome you to Office Hours number 11. I have a bunch of questions that are somewhat backlogged from this week as well as the week before, so I'm going to dive right into them. There's a couple that are reasonably short, so I can dispense with those really quickly. If you're showing up for the first time, the chat is open. So please avail yourself of the chat. You can just say hello. You can type in questions. You can do pretty much, whatever you want to do in the chat. Do be kind, although that hasn't been an issue at all. Everyone's always been really, really amazing in the chat. Before we get started, if you've chosen to subscribe, I do thank you quite kindly. And if you haven't yet, I hope that you'll consider doing so. I think the link is in the bottom of the screen. You can click on that and do that. That's really about it. So this one's a reasonably easy video or easy recommendation to give. They wrote in, "Hello, big fan of your videos. Thank you very much. Wondering what exercises would you recommend for increasing range?" I suppose this is somewhat complicated because, of course, without having heard this person sing, I don't really know where they are in their overall development. For starters, alignment in the thyroarytenoid dominant chest voice, if you will, singing voice, is crucial before you begin the process of expanding your range. Hello, Heidi. Welcome back. And hello, Susan. Good to see you here, too. FYI, hopefully I've got all my encoding issues worked out. I believe that things are working much better than they have in the past, so fingers crossed, as they say. It's going to be smooth sailing from here on out. I went to, figuratively speaking, I went to encoding school a couple weeks ago, and last week was great, and everything seems to be going well this week too, so we'll see. Anyways, developing your thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, chest voice, alignment of vowels. In other words, when you sing something in a comfortable range of your voice, when you can sing all of those vowels in a nice aligned way, in other words, they resonate similarly, then it's a good time. You'll probably have an easier time of expanding your range. Now, I'm also assuming that they mean expanding it upwards, because of course we can sometimes get a little bit more on the low end of our voices when we get those vowels aligned too. Expansion of range upward there's a couple critical points. One, engagement and airflow. If airflow is not adequate for the range that you are heading into, then your tendency will be to grip with the vocal fold. And in so doing, you're going to increase the tension, you're going to have intonation problems, you're going to have consistency problems, and most likely you're going to fatigue your voice much sooner than it would if you're using the mechanism in a released fashion. So you've got to evaluate your alignment and you've got to evaluate your airflow. When you've got those two things happening, there's a couple videos that are on the channel which are really, really good starters for people in order to get through that secondo passaggio, or the break, if you will. For male vocalists, how to sing high notes starting with part 1 is a great place to go from. I did a series of videos called how to sing through the break, and I did that in a variety of vocal ranges. That's a good one to check into as well. Next week, I'm releasing a video on smoothing out the break in 5 different ranges. That will be pretty good too, especially in conjunction with the lip trill video that I released this past week. That's a really good airflow, and the lip trill is great for working on transition stuff, working through the break, or as I say, the secondo passaggio, which is the top of the zona de passaggio, because it takes some of the weight off the vocal fold. I'm gonna already depart from my sheets here. So I'm going to take a look at what's on screen here. Last 2 minutes. So now I ask, what does it mean to sing like you same time feel inhaling? Let me read that again. What does it mean to sing like you same time feel inhaling? Can you Can you clarify that for me, Capone? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. Juan. Hi. I'm experiencing some problems with my voice. It's changing. My tone is lowering. Could you recommend some exercises? Juan, um, does this mean, like, when you say it's changing, are you a younger male vocalist whose voice is changing? Is that what's happening, or are you noticing something else happening? Anastasia Miller. Hello. Thank you for saying hi. Welcome. Susan Taylor. I saw your lip trill madness videos last night. I liked the video. Thank you very much. Problem is that I can't seem to do a lip trill when I place my fingers on the corners of my lips and stretch. Ah, the super lip trill. Okay. Yeah, the only thing that happens is air blowing out of my mouth. Okay. So, first of all, normally when I do the lip trill, it's a little squeeze, right? And that's normally when I show that to you, or if it's in the videos, you can't see my lips puckering because it's just a very, very tiny little lift, right? And then what it does is it takes a little bit of the weight of the lips off the teeth. And I'm beginning to think that it actually serves two purposes. One is that if you do it without your hands, there's a little bit of a pooching of the lips outwards. And I'm not a fan of increasing muscle tension in the outer facial muscles for the sake of that exercise. When the hand is here, you don't have to do any of that. Two, with the hand on the face, it makes it much easier to lower the jaw inside the oral cavity, inside your mouth. So when you do that, you can really let the jaw come down. Maybe you'll see sideways. And that's my mouth closed. And having some space between the molars can really, really enhance the response in the oral cavity, and it is much more typical of what it's like when we sing anyway. So I really like having the hand there. Now, if you mean this one, that's sort of the advanced course for the lip trill, and I humorously, it's meant to be humorous, call it the super lip trill. And I don't want you to get discouraged, but I would practice this and I would come back to the pulled lips from time to time, because that will be a really, really good indicator of how you are engaging and the efficiency of your engagement and the effectiveness. So when your expansion and engagement are getting particularly effective, that pulling apart of the lips will come much more easily, and it is excellent for upper register practice. If you have a song that you're working on and the parts are at or above the zona de passaggio, practicing through those parts with the lip trill, with the super lip trill, will, in my experience, has transformed the passage and made it much, much easier and much easier to maintain positive airflow through those passages. So stick with it, and let me know how it goes, Susan. And if I can help in some other way, I will think about that and maybe think about that and post something online if I can. But mainly, it's about really, really being extremely effective in your engagement in the airflow. Crazy King. I'm glad you like the Q&As. That's cool. Thank you very much for mentioning it, and welcome. JC's Radiant Ray. Good to hear about the smoothing of the break, which is upcoming. Yes, I'll have that out next week. And you do it without your hands. Okay, that's cool, Susan. Oh, so you mean the squeeze. Interesting. I skipped over Matt. Don't worry, Matt. I'm going to skip back to you. You're possibly squeezing too much then, Susan. If this is my face in a neutral position, here it is with the squeeze. And there's literally nothing. It's also possible, when you try that, see if you notice if you're sticking your lips forward. If you're flexing your facial muscles at all, try to let them be passive. Just try to... it's really difficult to not engage your muscles. What you can do to become aware of that muscle engagement is, if you try it and you find that you're pursing your lips or something like that, then do a little facial kind of reset there, come back and try it again. Matt Bourbon had a question. Just want to say your tenor warm-up video has been helping incredibly. You're very, very welcome. Thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate it. Sing from the mask. What it means to sing from the mask. Sure. Okay, so we have at our disposal a variety of resonances that we can employ in order to affect the sound of our voices. And there's a sort of a neutral position that most of my channel is meant to get us to. So the warm-up videos and the technical exercises are meant for us to get to this neutral position where we have a well-balanced vocal sound. The mask is an integral part of our overall sound. Some genres use more of it than others. So musical theater uses quite a bit of mask resonance. Popular music, pop rock, even country, popular music styles, they use a reasonable amount of mask, although not quite as much as theater. And then as you get into the classical genres, there's less and less of it. But the mask is nasal pharynx resonance coupled with sinus resonance. So what you do, or what you get, is that that's the NG exercise. And it forces all the air out the sinus passages, and so we can really feel everything vibrating up in the front of our faces. Sometimes you'll feel a little bit under the eyes because the sinuses are underneath there as well. There are some sinus passages up above the forehead, although I don't necessarily feel anything buzzing up there, but they are there. And what we do with the NG exercise is it's useful in terms of becoming aware of where the resonance is, learning to release into it, and how much of it we really want to use. So we can learn to use a variety of that resonance. And that allows us control over the timbre of our voices and also quite a bit of how much we're going to project. Some mask resonance is incredibly helpful for projection. If we strip it all out, like I did even in the last example, there's still a little bit. If I really pulled it all out, pardon me, it wouldn't sound too terribly awesome. There's a certain dullness to the sound when there's no sinus activity of any kind. So by placing some resonance forward, then we can control projection and timbre. It's also a very crucial element to crossing the secondo passaggio and maintaining consistent timbre. Now, the problem with mask resonance is that sometimes it gets confused with singing nasal. And when we sing nasal, we have to decouple the sound entirely from the vocal fold. So it's not that the vocal fold isn't producing the tone, it most certainly is, but there's very little resonance happening in the oral cavity. And what that happens, and that's not a particularly pleasant sound either. So in that instance, I'm really forcing everything out the top, and I'm not letting my oral cavity account for much of any of the resonance. And I don't think it's a particularly nice sound, quite frankly, but it's just a way of looking at the resonances. So we want to blend a bit of mask resonance. I hope that answers that question. Bikeman, good day, Jeff. Good day to you too, sir. Finally, hey, welcome. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate the accolades. You're very, very welcome. I personally am very, very fond of that diaphragmatic video. I think it's got some really, really good exercises in there Susan, thank you. You are very welcome. I do hope that helps, and please keep me posted. Uh, which is a Bay Area expression from like 20 years ago. So there's no reason. Keeping me posted means let me know how things are going. And if you would like that addressed in a video, I'll happily think about that and get some stuff out there. Heidi, how would you address the issue when someone sings off key in your group or choir? Okay, so intonation I find to be more an indication of poor airflow or poor alignment of vowels. So if they're singing off key, the first thing I would consider is the song in an appropriate key for them? What is their vowel alignment like? And what is their past experience with vocal instruction? So do they have any training? If they have no training of any kind, then I really feel like you've got to give them a bit of a pass. And you've got to figure out like what's the best way that we as a group can adapt in order to help them be successful. So if they're singing a solo or something like that, and we can change key to accommodate their range more effectively, that may help and get them in the game. Now, groups and choirs can't often do that. So then we have to look at what can we do to gently bring them into the fold and say, all right, look, I think this is what's happening with your voice, and that's why you're off key. So we have to maybe do some vocalizations as a group, do some airflow exercises, do the lip trill, do some vowel alignment exercises, anything that's going to help them get their apparatus better focused and more to the task. If they're really, really off key, even just a few minutes of that on a regular basis with your choir is going to really augment their ability, one, to get in key, but also to become aware of what's happening. And it's usually about that time that people start asking questions and wanting to know like what's going on and why does it sound that way and what can we do. And hopefully they'll come to you and ask that, and you can take them through some more exercises, some more alignment exercises. I might even suggest you have them look at a few videos here on the channel. I still, 2016 was supposed to be the year of expanding the beginner playlist, and it has gotten expanded, but not as much as I wanted to, and I've got to get on that. But there's going to be more of those videos. There's quite a few already that they can work with, but first is gentle. The singing voice, they can't switch guitars. They can't, grab a peg and fix it. They can't change patches on their keyboard. So we've got to be gentle and inclusive and bring them along and work to help as much as humanly possible. And usually, I think that most people are. I don't know. I always think that most people are generally aware that there's a problem anyway, and they may be really, really grateful for the help. I would hope that they'd be grateful for the help. So, all right, Susan, awesome, fantastic. Susan's communicating with you, Heidi. There, so she's standing next to you. It's hard for me to stay in tune when that happens. Yes, indeed. And that can be challenging too. You've got to focus on your part. And focus on those around you that aren't straying. Maddie, hi, hello. I loved when you did the warming up with chords video. Thanks for your great advice. You're very welcome. I'm actually going to be doing another warming up with chords video in the very near future here because someone requested a warm up with guitar. So like some tenor warm ups with guitar. And I thought that was a really, really interesting opportunity to do another warming up with chords video series. So hopefully you'll check into that as well. I'm glad you liked it. Bikeman, the mask is also used in acting class, which will come in handy with singing. Absolutely. Helps you hide and then expose your vulnerabilities or nuances you could use in your performance. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. Zoroko, I'm going to miss this today since I'm going to be out somewhere. I'll send you my question via email. Please do, Zoroko. Thank you. Have a great day wherever you are off to. Danielle, Office hours from Brazil. Fantastic. Fantastic. Welcome. Everson Jr., hello again. Good to see you back. So, yes, it is good to have you back. BR as well. I don't know what that means. Oh, Brazil? Brazil, is that what that means? Maybe. Jeff, can you explain the technique of vowel modification? It's a little confusing to me. Yes, I can. And I have a video that I'm going to do on this too. Vowel modification is one of the techniques that we use to effectively sing through the zona de passaggio and to make an adequate transition through the secondo passaggio. So go over the break into the upper register. The purpose of vowel modification is to ensure that we have enough space for adequate airflow to come over the vocal folds. And part of it is that too frequently the narrowest of vowel sounds will constrict airflow across the zona de passaggio. So you hear less of it for the wider vowels. So like ah, o, they don't require a ton of modification. In fact, those are the vowels that we're modifying towards. So if you think of E, the E vowel is the narrowest forward-focusing vowel, and is the widest amorphic, the schwa vowel, if you will. That's the vowel that we blend towards. So as I come towards my zona de passaggio, you'll start to hear it here. You can hear it widens. The key to vowel modification is we don't want to overdo it. We only want as much of it as is required to allow air to flow adequately over the vocal fold. We have to keep in mind the principal vowel that we're supposed to be singing. So in my case there, I just demonstrated it all with the E vowel. We have to get back to it at the end of the phrase. We have to narrow back down as we descend. So, pardon me. Hopefully that was apparent in the example. Each time I returned to my tonic, the tonic being the lowest note, I got back to that narrower E vowel until I got so high that I was really almost in the zona de passaggio for the start of it, in which case then I have to start from this somewhat modified vowel sound. If we don't have good airflow, no amount of vowel modification is going to get you through the zona de passaggio and into your upper register. However, they do work hand in hand. So without vowel modification, you will struggle to make a good transition through the secondo passaggio. But it works in conjunction with airflow, so you've got to be practicing your airflow as well. You'll notice in the videos of mine that are meant to go through the zona de passaggio, frequently I'll combine a narrow vowel with a wide vowel. So if you're here, for example, E, A, right? A is slightly wider than E, and what this can do is it can kind of help you get a feel for how it's going to widen as you get into the zona de passaggio, and as you anticipate that width, the E goes towards it. That's the idea anyways. I do hope that helps. Caponi, I read somewhere that when a singer pulls a little jaw backwards, the volume increases. Is it true? Okay. I've never read anything that would stipulate that, though I can understand how that might occur when you are ascending to rock the jaw backwards. Jaw placement is changing a lot right now in the pedagogical, the singing world, particularly in the oo and o vowels. Of course, in the past, we were always told to open your mouth wide, right? Open your mouth. But now we're finding that oo and o especially resonate so much in the nasal pharynx, which is the rear top of the esophagus, in the rear of the oral cavity, that having a slightly closed jaw and focusing on lifting the soft palate and opening the nasal pharynx can actually help them resonate much more effectively. So I have not heard about pulling the jaw backwards to increase volume. My suspicion is that it's coupled with some change in the oral cavity, and that's part of what's happening there. Heidi, thanks. The person has a good voice, but no training. We want him to sing. Yeah, if their voice is good, then take a look at the keys that he's singing in, or perhaps the part. If it's a choir, actually, we want him to sing, so it's a male vocalist. Consider having him switch over to baritone instead of tenor, or if he's singing baritone, switch him to tenor. Evaluate what's going on, because if their voice is good and they're getting good vowel alignment, then it might be that they're trying to sing in too much the extremities of their range. Susan Regoza. Yeah, the best exercises for my alto voice. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you for chiming in. I really, really appreciate it. Eldo. Hello. What's your favorite singers? I am all over the map. I love Jeff Buckley. I love Paul McCartney. I love Dietrich Friedrich Dieskau. Katie Lang is an amazing vocalist, and I enjoy her singing very, very much. Yeah, who else do I really, really like? I really like the guy from the Shins, although I kind of come and go. I'm a little bit on the fence with their music, I must say. Paul McCartney is just someone I come back to over and over and over again. I like Billy Joel. I really, really enjoy his voice and think he does a beautiful job. Let me see. Lately, it's funny. I've been listening to almost exclusively instrumental music these lately. So it's like a lot of Debussy, Ravel. Really going through like a romantic composer's phase. I don't question it. I just go with it, and I've been enjoying it immensely. I know that doesn't answer your question, but yeah. Everson, you're in Brazil as well. Okay, cool. Can you talk a little bit more about head voice falsetto for tenors? That's interesting. I'm happy to. And that kind of comes up on this one other question I had here. Through the passaggio with this exercise, should we gradually get more falsetto-y and maintain consistent volume, which I would think would be interesting or difficult to achieve at all, considering the typical, what falsetto actually typically means when we're using it. Or keep in full voice, inevitably getting louder and stopping when we're reaching. Okay, so if we're ever reaching, we want to assess what's going on. That's usually an inconsistency in airflow and range. So if we're reaching for something, then we're not balanced properly. Head voice, you use head voice / falsetto. So my thought there is that you're equating the two. And I don't, conceptually, I don't teach them as that. Falsetto is meant to be when the ligament, the outer surface area of the vocal fold, is vibrating predominantly. The main vocal fold will still vibrate to a certain degree, but it's largely held still. Head voice is when the cricothyroid muscles are engaged and elongating the vocal fold. And so what that means is that when we cross the secondo passaggio, the timbre can remain consistent. Specifically, so I'm going from my chest voice to my head voice there. That's head voice. I can exaggerate the differences to a certain degree. And there you should be able to hear my transition point. Okay? Falsetto, however, happens much higher up. And the thing is that falsetto, in the range that it's meant to be sung in, doesn't sound the way we think falsetto typically sounds. When we think about falsetto in a male vocal, we think of it as being light and airy. But in its actual range, it's not that airy. And yeah, so head voice is what we're doing. Head voice is the way that we expand our range initially, getting over the secondo passaggio. Oftentimes, when we are doing a really, really good job of making that transition, and hopefully that's the case here, there's very little, if any, you're not able to notice the transition, and so it's confused with someone that's pushing and pushing and pushing their chest voice. I assure you I am not doing that. I'm going from thyroarytenoid dominant singing, which is my chest voice, to cricothyroid dominant singing. So I hope that answers your question or addresses it to a certain degree. If you have a more specific question, please get in touch or type it in here. Danielle, could you suggest repertoire to apply the techniques you teach? The whole point. You're sure. I mean, I guess. Where are you at, Danielle, with your technique? Are you crossing the zona di passaggio? Tell me that first. And then I can maybe chime in a little bit more. Yeah. Where are you at? What's going on? Are you crossing the secondo passaggio? And if you're singing like popular songs, then tell me what genre you're typically singing in, so I can perhaps be a bit more specific for you. Got some Brazil rocks. I'm gonna have to check out Brazil sometime. I'm very curious now. Oh, where'd everybody go? Nathaniel, welcome back, Nathaniel. When you have a sore throat, is it normal to lose your head voice? If you're losing your head voice when you have a sore throat, you need to stop singing. Just take time off. You have to. That is the point at which it becomes unhealthy for us to continue to sing, and it's quite likely that when you are healthy again, it's going to make the process of recovering your upper register take longer, which is not what you want. So when I have a sore throat, it depends. Sometimes I lose my head voice, upper register, if you will. Sometimes I don't. If I do, I immediately cease singing and take some time off. You're very welcome, Bikemen. Greg's Life 7. If you lower your larynx, the volume goes up. That's true. The larynx is in control of the aperture that goes into the oral cavity. So if you lower it, it increases the width of the aperture, and that allows for greater airflow. Greater airflow means more resonance. Resonance and airflow for vocalists equals volume. Greg's Life 7. Jaw placement could lower your larynx, leading to that misconception. That's well said, Greg's Life 7. That's a very, very good point. Thank you for chiming in with that. Patricia, hello, Argentina. That's awesome. Thank you for hanging out tonight. I really appreciate it. Or day, whatever time it is over there. Yeah, okay, so Everson Jr., have you seen Ariana Grande's jaw? Yeah, that happens from time to time. You've got a vocalist, and I do see it ever so frequently. It's hard for me to even do it. Where it's like it's connected. It's somehow articulating the sound. Usually that is almost always paved in good intentions, if you get my drift here. The vocalist in question is really trying to articulate the line, really trying hard, and over time has developed this muscle attachment to articulating the sound. Ultimately, it would be better to loosen that up so that they didn't have to sing that way. But it does happen from time to time. Yeah. Couldn't I make it earlier? Hope you could answer my question about diaphragmatic apagio. Yeah, chime in, Patricia, and I'm going to try and get to everything I possibly can. Yes, that's your, that must be a side conversation or something. Is that right, Bike? Because I remember you mentioning her, that you're studying with her in the past. Heidi, thanks. He's a tenor, and since the other male singers are also tenors, I'll try to pick songs in their range. That would be fantastic. That's a great idea, Heidi. JAPADOGI, can you do a video about mask? How and when to use it? Allow me to make a note of that. Mask. How and when to use it. I do have to tell you, I'll tell you right off the bat, it's not so much how for sure. When is degrees, depending on what genre you're singing in. More or less mask resonance is appropriate, but I'm happy to do that. That's a great idea. JC's Radiant Ray. Regarding the E vowel, would you elaborate a little more about vocalizing the E vowel when descending into a middle range? If it's into your comfortable middle range, that, in theory, would be the most comfortable and flexible area of your voice. So for me, that's like G below middle C, F below middle C, that entire area is really comfortable. And I suppose, in some respects, if you're descending to it, what we're looking to do is to narrow. Oops, hit that button. I'm looking to arrive there with a nice, well-balanced E vowel. So if I'm descending to it, then it's going to narrow. With the E vowel, this should be relatively easy to do. In case in point, oftentimes when I have clients that are learning to transition through the zona di passaggio, that process begins with descending practice patterns, scale patterns, and arpeggio patterns. And if they're having a hard time with it, pardon me, I'll often switch them from a vowel that's easy to allow to be above the zona di passaggio, and one that, the E vowel, which is easier to narrow as we descend. You, we, you, we. And there we arrive at that nice narrow thing. You haven't asked this in your question, but oftentimes the issue with descending patterns is that we've allowed too much of our engagement, our support, if you will, to relax. And in so doing, as we're descending, the voice tends to fall flat, and we lose resonance and projection and everything else. And so you have to, the phrase that I often use is we have to sing it down. I have to really focus and keep my energy moving downwards, keep lifting abdominally in order to make sure that I can narrow while still keeping the sound open and well supported. I do hope that answers your question. Please feel free to elaborate if not. Danielle, you're very welcome. I am honored. Thank you very, very much. I mean, tongue placement and where should I focus the narrow E in a mid-range? I tend to close it off in that range. For vocalizations, tip of the tongue will be, I say the word anchored behind the front bottom teeth. But what I mean by that is lightly touching them and staying there. So it's not that you want the tip like mashed into your front bottom teeth, but it's lightly touching there and it's resting there. The rear of the tongue for the E vowel will be lifted. So it will be quite high, way back here at the tongue root in the rear of the oral cavity. If it's too high or you've got too much overall tongue tension, and you'll know that if the tip is not touching the front teeth, then oftentimes if you look in your mouth, it will be pulled back and in the middle of your mouth. Then you're quite likely blocking off a lot of airflow with the volume of your tongue in the oral cavity. Try to keep the tip down by the front bottom teeth and see if that helps. Capone, check Nina Hagen's jaw when she sings. She does whatever she wants with it. Eating food and singing at the same time. It looks awful, but she can sing. I like seafood. I don't know if I like seeing food while people are singing, but I'll check it out. Nina Hagens. Greg's Life 7. How do I start using vibrato? I know there's a difference between vibrato that cuts off airflow and proper vibrato. You are absolutely right. But I don't know really how to tell the difference. Okay, so a proper vibrato will actually enhance your vocal technique. It develops out of good vocal technique. So, for one, I did do a video a couple weeks, or it might now actually be a couple months ago, on kind of stimulating some vibrato. So, by all means, have a look at that and see if it helps. A choppy vibrato, okay, actually that's the answer. When vibrato is done by fluctuating your airflow, then it gets very, very choppy. And there I'm pumping my abdominal muscles to kind of the sound. If you're doing it all with pitch modulation, in other words, you're forcing the vocal fold to do the vibrato, that tends to be slow, wide, and choppy as well. When your vibrato occurs naturally, it starts off as feeling like an instability in your voice, like it's like you're about to lose the note. You're going to sing off key, or your voice is going to crack. It's quite likely to start in like smack dab in your most comfortable zone, or a little bit on the higher side when you're engaged a bit more and putting more airflow over the vocal fold, but not yet to the zona de passaggio. So you want to take a look, like whatever vocal range you're singing in, you want to look at the area that's kind of, a minor third, major third below the zona de passaggio for you. And that's going to be the place where it's probably going to start happening for you. And again, it will manifest itself as like an instability in the voice. And what I tell my clients is to encourage the wobble. You'll feel it wobble a little bit. You may feel a little bit of modulation purely in the solar plexus, not in anywhere else in the abdominal area. It's going to be just the solar plexus may feel a little bit like they're kind of shimmying a little bit, and try to encourage it. I've had singers like try to shake it in like this. You can try that. What you're doing when you do that is, of course, shaking the abdominal muscles, and you're destabilizing the core, assuming that you've got already very, very good, adequate airflow happening. And that slight amount of instability can help to, get the wobble to come into your voice a little bit and develop into a consistent, nice vibrato. If you really, really want to get your vibrato to happen, be aware of that feeling of instability, but focus on your alignment and your airflow in producing a well-balanced, fairly effortless, what I think of as a neutral sound to the voice. So when I'm singing something like this, I'm not doing anything. I'm just engaged. I'm expanded, engaged, and allowing air to come over the vocal fold. I'm consciously picking the vowels, but I'm really allowing this to just do whatever it's going to do. And that is a much more likely way to find your vibrato and to find one that is going to be sustainable and it's going to spin for you. That was actually, thank you for asking that question. That was on the sheets. I was supposed to cover that off the sheets. So thank you for asking that. Let me see, where am I now? JAP, I do teach by Skype. If you get in touch with me via the website, we can hook it up. Patricia, to refresh our email exchange, my specific question is if when you do this kind of arpeggio, oh yes, you are on my sheets too. Thank you for chiming in with that, and thank you for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. Okay, so let's see here. The obliques as lifting and pulling in. If this is the case, then the line along the waist would be reduced as if we were trying to become thinner. And then there's a word there that it's PUICTUR, picture, I imagine is. Thinner for the like you're taking a photo and you're right. Got it. Thinner for the picture. Okay. And I ask you this particular point because I was taught that at the waistband, and in order to keep the rib expansion, the action of the obliques would be such that one feels like becoming wider at the laterals, not in and lifted. Please explain. Because, okay, so lots and lots of... whenever I start talking about arpeggio, the first thing out of my mouth is, I am probably going to say something about it that conflicts with what you've been taught in the past. Don't take my word for it. Go and take a look. The sources of this are from Richard Miller's books on training soprano voices and training tenor voices, and you can also take a look at Shirley Emmons. If you type her name into a Google search or whatever search engine you use, she has an incredibly beautifully concise description of the arpeggio breath management system. And here's the thing. Oftentimes we've been taught to push our stomach muscles out. And I meant, in addressing this question, I meant to wear a really tight shirt underneath my black shirt with a collar, but I forgot to. So I'm just going to have to pull my shirt in and try to show you. So I'm going to back up here. And hopefully you can seems like you should still be able to hear me okay. The first step in arpeggio is the expansion. So when I expand, my rib cage comes out. Now, if I pull my shirt tight here, you can kind of see. This is expanded. Here's my waist. Okay? And these muscles are lifting towards my diaphragm. Now, the diaphragm is really high. It's really, really way up here. Okay? And all these abdominal muscles are lifting to engage with it. The diaphragm will resist that in order to create the suspension that we sing with. So it's not that I'm, pulling my chest up and sucking my stomach in. Shake it off. My chest is open without being pushed forward and up. My shoulders are in a neutral position. I expand. I engage, but there's not a ton of motion really. The main thing about arpeggio and about the posture for it, it's not that we're sucking anything in. The expansion and the descent of the diaphragm and the lifting of these muscles, the body position is a relatively open but more or less neutral kind of position, and very, very little motion of any kind happens through the process of inhalation and exhalation. So, in other words, taking a breath and singing. So if I go through a cycle of singing a few scales, and I'll pull my shirt tight again, as tight as I can get it with my hand back there. So I expand. And then I relax. It's all, there's much, much less motion that is occurring when we have good, stable suspension and engagement than you typically see when someone's pushing their stomach out and sucking it back in. So I hope that helps with the question that you asked. It's a very, very good question. Apagio, I think, unfortunately, I think we're often told to stick our stomachs out and to pull it back in because it's really, really easy to observe. When we're doing apagio well, what you mostly notice is the person is standing with a really nice posture and not moving a whole lot. There's not a whole lot that you can see, and yet there's so much that's happening underneath the surface in terms of engagement and maintaining that openness of the suspension. So, yeah, let me see here. And front wall goes in or flexible or what? Yeah, I mentioned that just now. Jake, 3048, what's the best way to stretch chest voice safely? Make it more powerful in belt sound. Okay, so I'm going to focus on the word safely. Because my teaching is I want the absolute best for the people that I work with for the absolute longest amount of time. I want to sing the day before they plant me, whenever that day should come. So it's all about sustainability. If you want to belt and you want to have more power, okay, so more power, focus on resonance, focus on airflow. The voice is a non-linear occurring instrument. If that sounds Scientific American-like, it's because it was a Scientific American article many years ago. If you Google it, you'll find it. It's something to the effect of like the voice as a non-linear instrument. What that means is that we sing louder for taking advantage of the reciprocal nature of resonances in the oral cavity. In other words, when there's a limit to how hard you can push the vibratory apparatus, the vocal fold. At a certain point, it just can't vibrate with any more amplitude, volume. What we rely on, what opera singers rely on who have ridiculously loud voices, is the soft tissue and the resonance, the soft tissue in the oral cavity, the nasal pharynx as a resonator, and the front mask as a resonator. And all of those resonances working together to basically feedback on themselves to create a bigger and bigger tone, right? We get that by releasing tension, not by trying to force it. And too frequently with belting, there's this idea of forcing it, and that will ultimately be self-defeating. If you insist on belting, what that technically means is that you are going to prevent your voice from crossing the secondo passaggio. In other words, you're going to require that the thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice be the predominant mechanism for all of the notes that you sing. So, in order to do that safely, I would highly recommend you limit the actual range that you will be singing in. And you need to limit it to about a major second above the secondo passaggio. So for me, that would be a G natural above F. I do not do that. I choose instead to match resonances and to make the transition. And so what I would say is, I can do that here. The second one was the transition, or the third one. I guess I sang it 3 times, didn't I? The first 2 I belted. The third one, I made a transition. Now, if I take a little bit off the front of that, the transition becomes less noticeable, but I get more range. And I'm going to take more range for myself personally. But different genres require different things of us. So that's what I would recommend to safely belt more powerfully. JAPADOGI, should larynx stay absolutely stable, or it can move a little bit, especially in higher notes? What helps or disturb to develop vocal range and tone? Okay, we want it to be pretty stable. It can be beneficial if it lowers. So as you're going higher and higher and it lowers, that's okay. If it's raising, that's probably not going to be okay, because that's going to constrict airflow, and you are going to be flirting with disaster in that you can start to get into a cycle where, as airflow constricts, you apply more vocal fold engagement, and when that happens, you very quickly lose the ability to be in that range. So lowering as you ascend is okay. Raising as you ascend, not so good. The arpeggio technique seems to be quite physically involved. Yes, Patricia, it is, and yet at the same time, it has had a tremendous impact on my singing voice. This is why the descriptions and the involvement of it, the physical involvement of it, is why I always tell people to check the sources, check Richard Miller's books, check Shirley Emmons' web post. Don't take my word for it, because it often conflicts with everything that we have been taught. It conflicted with what I was taught, which is why I always try to stay in lessons. So I like to have a teacher. I don't have a teacher right now, but that's okay for a short period of time. But when I started reading Richard Miller's books to try to understand the technique a bit more, I got to the breathing thing. It made absolutely no sense. It conflicted with everything that I had been taught thus far. But I started reading those books because I wasn't as consistent as I thought I could be, as I thought I ought to be, for how long I'd been singing and for how much I was practicing. So I read the book. It really boggled my mind. It's like I couldn't even read it correctly because it was so opposite of what I've been taught. Got with a teacher, got on the path and started understanding arpeggio, got into the technique, and after a while, everything became so much more consistent, so much better, so much more control, and so much more satisfaction with my voice. I know it's a little bit esoteric in talking about it, but I would highly recommend getting into it. JC's Radiant Wraith. Singing down, yes. I have this challenge only with the E vowel. I do not know why. Everyone's got that one vowel. For me, it's oo. Everyone's got one vowel. It's a little bit tricky. Enjoy some live music, Capone. Bikemen, are we allowed to speak? No, of course not. No, absolutely not bike men. But I must say, I am about to wrap this up. So I'm going to take what I can see here and then bid you a fond farewell. JC's Radiant Ray, thanks for Lip Trill Madness. Your super lip trill feels like abdominal crunches. Thank you very much. You're very, very kind. Yeah, the super lip trill is really, really good. It's so good for upper register work. You're very welcome for Lip Trill Madness. For mezzos, what are the passaggio notes? Certainly, it's going to vary among people. This is why when people ask me what their vocal range is in YouTube, I always tell them I don't know. I can give you all kinds of statistics about where the passaggio points are, but without really spending some time getting to know your voice, it's very, very difficult to say. But for mezzos, 4, 5, D5, E flat 5, E5 in that general vicinity is where you're probably going to be dealing with the secondo passaggio. And yeah, it's going to vary among people. There's so many different fascias for any given voice type, and that's why, because there are so many individual differences. Everson Jr., can I say we're the first and second passaggio, primo and secondo passaggio in the tenor range, and how to get through them? Oh, volumes have been written on that. Well, Everson Jr., they vary. The primo passaggio and the tenor range vocalist can be as low as D4. And I'm just remembering I mean, depending on who you ask, there are half a dozen, give or take, different designations of tenor. Off the top of my head, spinto, lyrico, robusto, barotenor. That's 4. So yeah, like D5, and then the secondo passaggio can be E5, F5, F sharp 5, G5, anywhere in there really. Again, depends on the vocalist. And Greg's Life 7's chimed in with that as well. How to get through them? Better that I should point you to some videos. If you type in "singing through the break" on my channel, or if you go to the "How to Hit High Notes" Part 1 for male vocalists, that is how to ultimately get through the zona de passaggios. Greg's Life 7, you're absolutely right. Most people go right through the primo passaggio without even noticing it. I'll often say that the primo passaggio is the point at which your vocal technique starts to matter. But yeah, you just go on right through it. Bikeman. I have 3 vocal artists I admire. I don't want to sound like them, but how in practice can I create my own original sound using their technique? That's a really interesting question. Well, at the risk of sounding too simplistic, first of all, find out their technique. Figure out who they studied with, and explore those teachers' teachings for one. I would also look at presumably you're listening to them. So if you don't yet know their genre, then I would spend quite a bit of time listening to them. Oftentimes, the elements of style are most revealed in the way that they sculpt their vowel sounds, the way that they use their voice through the zona de passaggio, and what amount of consonant sound they are using. So how much are they articulating the sound of their lines, and that would serve as a starting point for you to then use what they are doing. In other words, deconstruct what they're doing. And in so doing, I think what you will find are the things that you are most enamored with in their sound. And from there, you can focus on the creation of that in your own voice and in your own performance. So, like using myself as an example, I'm very, very fond of Paul McCartney's voice. I'm very fond of Jeff Buckley's voice. I'm very fond of Tom York's voice from Radiohead. Those 3 individuals are widely different as vocalists. but they all have a beautiful upper register that is gained by a very, very seamless transition into it. So they're really, really making a beautiful transition through the zona de passaggio. And so that, I mean, has been a big focus for me, is to making that transition just as absolutely as smooth as I can, to open up as much range as I possibly can, um, to use in my own stuff. So, yeah. So what I'm gonna do is now I'm going to wrap this up. I want to thank you all so much for coming out tonight. I really, really appreciate it. I'm going to take a screenshot of my chat, from Patricia, and you're very welcome, Patricia. I hope that helps, and please keep in touch, and let me know, you know, if you need more explanation, because I'm really, really a big believer in Appoggio, and I really think it can help us all. And so just keep me posted. I'm going to take a screenshot of the rest of these questions here, so that I can address them next week. I'm so sorry I did not get to them this week. I've gone over, but I didn't quite make it. So I'm going to take these first thing next week. Thank you so very, very much for coming out. I really, really appreciate it. Take really good care of your voices. Enjoy singing, and hopefully we'll see you again. For those of you in the United States, have a lovely 4th of July. For those of you elsewhere, have a lovely, lovely week, and I hope that we'll get to spend some time next Saturday as well talking about singing. Bye.